No, right there. There it is. What is it? Right there.
You don't want my answer.
Note the time.
I skated in, thanks to our city streets cleaners.
All right. So, again, welcome, everyone. Let me start off by just reading the purpose statement. The primary objective of the CAC is to ensure capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the voters at the November 2nd, 2004, November 6, 2012, and November 7th, 2017 ballot measures are accomplished with PPRTA funds. This committee reports directly to the PPRT Board of Directors. So we have a quorum, so all alternates can vote. So what I would entertain is a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Tony?
Second.
Second, Larry. Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Any public, say again? Oh, okay. Any public comment for items not on the agenda? Any of the committee members? Anyone in the public, in the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on. Approval of minutes from the January 2nd meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Tony and Larry? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Beverly, financial reports.
Good afternoon. We had another good month. November, sales and use tax, $9,259,000, so $1,192,000 ahead of the monthly budget, or 14.8%. And we're $10,222,000 above the annual budget. So unless December is really negative, we'll be able to pay CDOT the remainder of the money to get up to the $10 million. So that is good news.
So we should have a deduction for every rear-end crash that takes place.
Yes.
Anyway, so on the second page then, compared to last year's year-to-date, the actual were ahead of last year so far by $6 million. So are there any questions about any of the financial reports?
When we get to the end of the year, when we're at the end of the year, will we have an adjustment that you will make in both the maintenance and the bus lines? Because of that money for CDOT, that's only 55% of what is over budget. So we still have 45%.
Sure.
So
That comes in the amendment to the 2020 budget. So it takes a long time to close out the year because of these big projects and the invoices and the inspections and all that. So then once I have the final numbers and the audit, which is at the end of April, and then we start the amendment process, those are carryovers. And so we'll have a calculation, you're right, the 10% for transit, 35 for maintenance will just be carried over. And there's probably going to be some capital that's going to be remaining also that will be allocated to next year that's a carryover from 2019.
but that probably, we probably won't see that then until about April then.
June.
June.
Comes in June.
Okay.
So
All right. Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Beth?
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Beth. 2020 capital maintenance and public transportation contract, City of Colorado Springs.
Good afternoon. Mike Chavez, City Engineering. We got 8 items to go over with you, contract-wise. So the first item we have is a construction contract, which we're going through an RFP process to select a contractor to do the cost share program, and we are evaluating those right now. We haven't picked one, but there's 3 contractors who submitted, but we're just getting authorization to award that once we pick.
Mike, what is the cost share program?
So there is a long list of repairs that people call in for the city to fix. And what operations does or did is if somebody's willing to actually split the cost, they can kind of move ahead on the list. 50-50, yeah.
Pay to play.
Yeah. Next item is, we did an RFP.
That's primarily sidewalks and
Sidewalks
and curbs and gutters right in front of it, right? Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure.
The handicap ramps are handled separately, that's ADA, and there's a lot more money in that.
Okay, so
That's, yeah,
that's different than the cost share.
yes. All right, any other questions? Next item we have is materials testing for PPRTA work done by Operation Maintenance, and we did an RFP. There was 4 firms who submitted, and they selected basis partners. So we're looking to award a task order-based contract, so it'd be just a task order issued. So there's the $200,000 per task order limit and the yearly $2 million.
Mike, just to refresh my memory, when you say materials testing, that's like subgrade and potholing?
It'd be subgrade, it'd be concrete testing, inspection, yeah.
Gotcha, thanks.
Is this a new company? I don't recall the name prior review.
Yes, it is a new company.
Anything else? Okay.
Next item is a change order to Anderson Mason Dale on the pedestrian bridge. This one is for some basically some anticipated expenses that they'll be submitting invoices for their work. This contract, again, we've got a cap on how much is allowed to be spent on the pedestrian bridge, so we're tracking that, and Rick is too. So this fits within that whatever it was, 4,650 max.
We're watching it too. I have a question. Mike, when are they going to set the bridge? We were told that it was going to be When are they going to set the bridge? We were told that it was going to be in January. And I don't want to hold them up, but I also want to be present.
Yeah, no, it's going to be later on, and I'll have better idea for the board, but I think it's April or May.
Yeah, I was just going to, please make sure that we get notice of that so that.
Yes, we
I want to see if that bridge to nowhere actually ends up somewhere.
we actually, yeah, we've been talking to our PR people, and we're going to have an announcement and let people know.
Okay.
It's all about connections.
Just a point of clarification, maybe just for me, but, we've talked about this before. There was money set aside for flagging, which was considerable. In fact, we were all sort of stunned by the amount. And then I thought we were changing over to building the bridge in another location and hoisting it in a very short period of time. What's happening to that money that was set aside for the flagging, since it's going to be a couple of day event rather than 6 months?
I'm not familiar with all the details of, how much the flagging will shift. I'm sure there'll still be need for that money for construction.
Yeah, but it was set up, it was designated for flagging, which was going to a third party. So I would think you can't just move that to something else.
I'm not sure how. I guess that's something we'll have to talk to Rick about. I mean, there was a max amount set for the bridge project, some design, some construction, and I think those are estimates, trying to show where we think the money's going to go. So that's a good point. I guess we'll have to see.
Would it be safe to assume that when you change the method of assembly, construction, and suspension, that you also adjusted the estimates, and that money went somewhere else within the project? Would that?
I think, I would say not that it has gone. I think it will go to something in the construction side.
I mean, I'm thinking if you don't have to build it over train tracks, it probably is cheaper to build rather than more expensive.
Yeah, they did have that in the presentation that they gave when they gave us that, but I don't recall that the
was
budget
over-
was in enough detail for us to see where the
Yeah,
money
it
went.
struck me it was something in the excess of $1 million, though, so it was substantial.
Right, yeah. Okay. Did you
Mike, can you refresh our memory on how the bridge is to be put in? I'm recalling that it was to be built along the east side of the railroad tracks and then lifted into place and set.
Yes, and that's the plan. So they're going to assemble it somewhere on the off-site.
Or I
And
said
then-
east side, west side, well, east side of the railroad tracks, west side of the museum.
Yes, west side, yeah. And so, west of the tracks, and then they're going to move it with some,
Yeah.
no, they're actually like little multi-tired
Dolly thing.
dolly, yeah, supercharged dolly. Move it over in place, and then they would lift it by crane onto the abutments.
I have no idea how long it will take to build it in place and then move it in, but I spent a considerable amount of time in that area about 2 weeks ago, and there's no bridge being built there yet to be moved.
Yeah, no, like I said, that's why I think they're looking at putting it up. And I'll need to verify that, but I thought it was April or May is kind of where, last I recall.
We'll have to have a wine and cheese party.
I want hard.
It's out of the flagging money.
Yeah, no RTA. Rick won't let us spend any money on food or drink. All right. Next item we have is a contract for SEH. Basically, that's they're the designer on the Bars Road widening. They just will be on call in case there's design issues that they need addressed during construction. So that's for $30,000 change. It's actually a change order to their contract.
Scott?
Does that include geotech material?
No, this is just design services. By designer, we have a separate company for CM services and inspection. Well, I think it's just a number just in case. We may not need much of it. 7 feet. That's what we said.
All right, so that kind of leads into my question.
Quick question, how did you come up with $183? Why not just round it off to $30,000? You don't know, it's an on-call type thing, and, hey, I need this. You had to have a reason to have $183.
Well, they put their hours in the rate and then some expenses, and
Okay, so I got a question. On the, on the 7 feet cut on that hill, you've got that trail that is, I've forgotten the name of that trail, but you got the trail that comes across there right at the very top of that hill. That's also a school crossing zone.
So our project, it stops short of that, so we won't be, I don't think we'll be affecting that.
So where are you, because the crest is right there at that trail. So if you're going to take 7 feet off of that incline, it seems like you've got an entrance into a townhome complex, right there on the Solar Ridge Drive actually goes into that road actually goes into that apartment or townhome complex. But that's a school crossing and a part of the trail system through there. So I was just curious if you're going to take it down and you've 7 feet.
No, I think we tie back into the existing road before that.
Okay. We'll see it. Yeah, it's right at the crest.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, that's the bridge.
Yeah. Next item, we have a bridge replacement, a Cheyenne Avenue Bridge over Cheyenne Run, which is over there by the Idlewild School and the Millbow Art Theater. We're replacing that bridge. That's mostly funded with general fund money, but we were a little short, so we're asking for $250,000 of RTA Emergency Bridge Fund to just kind of have as a backup. I think we're going to try to use all the city money and not use the RTA money, but we may need to.
Okay. I got a question. So I saw, we funded this study for the traffic study for that whole Ivy Wild area. And I noticed in the paper that they had a public meeting.
It's coming up.
It's coming up?
Monday, I believe.
Monday, okay. Once that is complete, can you make a note to maybe come back and give us a 30,000 view result of that traffic study over there?
Yeah, I can do that.
I think that with the construction of the roundabout and the other kind of stuff that's going in that area, and then just to the north and east of where this bridge replacement is that green zone that runs down behind the the Nevada Avenue redevelopment or urban renewal thing there. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how that traffic study accommodates that new green zone and all that stuff's going on.
Okay, yeah, I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So the bridge that's being pointed out on this map here, that's a tiny little bridge, right? It's almost a culvert, basically. Are you guys doing a full bridge over that, or just putting in the?
No, I think we're putting, we're replacing it with a culvert-type bridge.
You are, okay.
Box culvert thing kind of thing.
Right, and looking at almost, oh wait, never mind. I was thinking of the other one. Right, that's good, thanks.
How does it constitute an emergency?
Well,
You're
it's
taking.
funny, I was thinking about that. I was thinking that somebody was going to ask that. But I guess to explain the emergency bridge fund briefly is Aaron and the previous bridge engineer did a really good job of setting up a program to kind of do a maintenance on our bridges and kind of have a cycle and an evaluation. So they've done a good job of, getting to bridges that are in bad shape and doing some repairs on them. And there's about a dozen bridges that we monitor every 30 days that we're cautious about, and we tend to those as need be. But we've gotten to the bridge program to a point where we don't have bridges falling down or imminently falling down, which is a good thing. But instead of just letting that money sit there, what they're doing is they're looking at what's the worst bridge, and they're looking to replace them or fix them so that we do it before there's a collapse. And so that's why we keep saying we keep coming with these bridge replacements, because we don't have anything that's fallen down, but we have bridges that are precarious. And I shouldn't maybe say that, but we'd like to get them replaced before they become precarious. So that's why we keep saying this bridge is being replaced with emergency bridge fund, because we don't have something that is
Not an A-list issue.
falling down. So it's just being proactive, and therefore when we do like this bridge, and this comes off our list of bad bridges, and so we can move on to others, and we have to worry about this one because it's new, and that's kind of how the program has evolved.
Mr. Chair. Okay.
And
I'm sorry, because of the way it was printed, it was on the back of the next one.
Uh-huh.
The question I was going to ask does still apply. For such a tiny little box culvert, is 1.4 million typical for that?
Yes, I would say. I mean, some of our other bridges, the Academy Bridge over Cottonwood, we thought was originally was $1 million.
Much larger.
Yeah, but it was the initial estimate was $1.2 million, and it ended up costing $10 million. This bridge on Cheyenne Run actually has got a fair amount of channel work to stabilize it, and it also, we are upsizing it because it wasn't the existing bridge isn't large enough to handle the 100-year flows.
Yeah.
How about the water crossing?
Okay.
All right, and then next time we have a change order at HDR for some additional design work and some geotechnical work. And this, for the most part, is related to some water line replacement work. So the majority of the change order is going to be paid by CSU. That's the 91,000. But for bridge work, that portion of the change order is about 26,000.
CSU being Colorado Springs Utilities?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the last one is there's a lot of stormwater and intersection work at Chelton, the entrance to the Citadel Mall. And so we are replacing the signal there. And so we'll be using the traffic engineering's operations, safety and traffic operations funds to fund the signal replacement. And then the rest of it's covered by city funds, stormwater funds for the stormwater work.
Can I ask a quick question? I was literally just through that intersection. Why is the light being replaced?
The traffic, it's old.
Just because it's old? Not because it's...
Well, it's part of the traffic's plan of replacements. I mean, it's on their list.
Okay.
So, unclear in the memo where Citadel Mall covers a pretty good footprint. So this would be on the west end, on Shelton Avenue, the bus area, and the transfer station, and all that area. Okay, because
So it's the main entrance just south of the bus stop.
Yeah, because there is some flooding that does occur, and there's some steel grates that run across the road through that area down there. I think it might be beneficial to add where in the Citadel Mall this is in the memo.
Oh.
And the second piece of is that will it's a hard question to answer, but is it projected that any future work at Citadel Mall or in terms of use for what that's going to be, this would not be, the work we spend doing this would not be impacted by any of that? This is in roadway, not necessarily into their property?
Yeah, no, I don't think any change in the mall would affect.
It's in the city right away, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But I think it would be helpful if
Yeah, and I
put
should
Shelton Road on there.
I should have put a map. I didn't.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
Yes, Gene?
Mike, a quick question and sort of tongue-in-cheek. Can anything be done about the amount of hail runoff coming down Shelton from the north? As far as mitigating its impacts and burying cars?
Well, I think, and I'm not familiar with plans, but I imagine we're putting more inlets upstream to capture it and getting rid of those grates because they clog, and that's what's causing the issue. All right. All right.
Well, the engineers don't want to keep the boss totally informed.
The project would replace, you have the metal grates you mentioned across, basically taking those out and running a new storm system sort of north on Shelton to tie into existing sort of storm system somewhere in that area. And that is to specifically address, if you remember there about 4 or 5 years ago, there was 5 feet of water in that intersection, and we're addressing that storm issue, or the project is addressing that storm issue in that area. That kind of gets to your question.
Okay.
I've seen the plans and I've been involved because there was a signal modification, but that's about as far as my knowledge on that project.
Well, like Mike was saying, I'm assuming that the reason for the signal modification is because you're doing all this other work. Might as well just do it at the same time.
Yeah, we're making
kind of an idea.
Yeah, we're making some intersection modifications as well, and so we're trying to jointly team with another project to get it all done at once, so we're not back in there a second time.
Economy of scale, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Todd. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and that's it for this month.
What about your line item transfers? Is that a separate one?
Separate.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, any questions for Mike on any of these projects? Or hear a motion to?
Move to approve the 8 projects.
So Tony and Larry, again?
Curly and Mo.
Curly and Mo, there we go.
Which one is most?
Okay, item 6B.
Okay, so the next item we have is we have finished several.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
did you not?
No, we didn't.
I thought.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we can go to 6B.
All right. So we have
was thinking
several
about the wine
A-list
party.
projects that we have finished, and they are in the warranty period. So we are looking at transferring most of the money out of those projects. We're going to leave a little bit in just in case something comes up. If, normally warranty issues are with the contractor, but if there's something we need to do, I'm just leaving like $5,000 in them so that the project can close and we don't have to open it up if something comes up. But what I'm looking at is moving money out of Academy over Cottonwood Creek, the Enchanted Circle Bridge replacement, Dublin improvements, and Centennial Boulevard reconstruction. And moving those into basically the three bridge projects that we started early in 19, also putting some money into Black Forest, widening for design, and I need $300 to pay CDOT off on the Old Ranch Road. So we moved enough money in those bridge projects to start the concept and preliminary design and putting more money into it so we can just continue into final design and get those ready to go to construction. We'll have to see when we actually build them because of cash flow, but we wanted to get these projects underway and get a good cost estimate to see where they're landing cost-wise. We did also move, how much did we moved $1,650,000 out of the Barnes Road project. We had a pretty high cost estimate, so I had moved money into it, anticipating it, but we got a really good bid on the project. So we, even moving $1,600,000 out of it, there's still a fair amount of money left there over for contingency. I don't think we're going to need near it, but just to be safe. But we could use that $1,600,000 in the Black Forest, so that's why we moved money out of Barnes.
Okay. No, nothing. Rick, and you had a question?
I just want to know, when are we going to start seeing some action on Mark Shuffle? I mean, that area north of Carefree.
We have no funding. That's a major endeavor, and we, at this point, don't have any funding. Well, that's going to the bridge, and that was only $4 million. And then, actually, Todd's got a little more info. I mean, we've got a few things in the works, but he's got some.
Once again, I have a little bit of info. The only Mark Shuffle work in the near future will be the developer will be adding some additional pavement and lanes between Woodman Road and Vista del Cerro or something. Where that it's Oakwood Homes. Yeah. And that should be happening probably this spring when they can pave. That'll allow. There will be now sort of 4 lanes from Vista del, what was it again? Yeah, okay, to Woodman.
Spanish.
Yeah, no, I'm not very good with Spanish words. So then that'll allow us to make some modifications at the intersection, allow it to do some dual left turn lanes, both northbound and from westbound to southbound. So it should help clear up some congestion at the intersection. But
then it goes nowhere. It's down to 2 lanes again.
Well, when you go south, yes. Yes.
Well, and there's
The rest
also
of
that flooding issue that happens right in that gully there.
That's down further south, yeah.
Yeah.
But, that came from the first RTA, didn't it? Wasn't that part of the project?
Yes.
The city's part of the project on the north, where the city and California County to the south?
Well, the RTA one, I think all of Mark Shuffle was county, and we took it over lately. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the Mark Shuffle work that was planned wasn't able to be accomplished because the economy tanked. I think there was some developer.
There was issues with Banning Lewis.
Yeah, so I'm not sure of all the history. I just know that there is that segment you're talking probably from Carefree North It's just two-lane, and we're looking to see what we can do. We're trying to work with developers to do some spot improvements, but as far as a substantial project, there really isn't budget for that, and we'll probably be an RTA 3.
Oh, man, that's too bad, because that needs to be prioritized.
Well, with the development of Barnes going all the way across now, across into that development, Stetson Hills and Barnes going straight across there now, that intersection is getting pretty nasty out there in terms, at certain times of the day.
That whole section is bad, and we've been talking about it for years, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
You could four-wheel drive with a ditch.
Can I borrow your truck? Test it?
Any other questions on any of these yes, sir, Carlos?
Yeah, just to go back to the Barnes project, that's quite a bit, the transfer, 1.6. Just again, walk me through we had a higher estimate for Barnes originally, and that's quite a bit, $1.6 million is quite high. Was there a change in the design? Or?
No, like I said, based on the design and the estimate that the consultant came, we were expecting the construction cost of, I don't know, $4.5 million. So I had put money into that in anticipation, but the bids came in quite a bit lower. I forget right offhand, but basically we had $3.8 million in excess, even with the construction costs in there. So I took 1.6. There's still $2 million in there, but I don't, and we're not going to spend that money. But I didn't want to pull it all out. But I just needed.
No, I understand. What my question
but the estimate came in a lot lower.
With the estimate, why the discrepancy?
Not the estimate. The bids came in a lot lower, or the low bidder. Now the other bids were more in line with what the estimate was, but the low bidder came in quite a bit lower. And before we awarded it, we made sure that they were comfortable, and they said they are. So we lucked out, actually, and I hope other projects continue coming like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather not luck out or rely on luck. I'm just trying to see if there's a way to improve some of these cost estimation techniques.
Well, like I said, most of them were in the ballpark of the estimate, but one guy came in substantially lower, and we're cautious because sometimes that means can mean trouble, but it's a smaller company, and they probably had a lower head.
Needed to work.
So
they were hungry contractors.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I've been in that position before. But, sometimes with their cost structure, they'd be able to do things a little bit better. I would say that's good news, but I just wanted to understand that you're comfortable with the bid that they put together, and
we
do it within the cost
that
they.
And that's why I'm also not, just emptying the account either, just in case there's some unforeseen circumstance out there. When they, there's not much out there to pop up. It's not like some of the older parts of town where you start digging and find a lot of stuff. We don't anticipate finding anything, but you never know.
Move approval of the line items as presented.
Second. So we had who's second? Jim? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6C, El Paso County Capital Projects line item transfer. Good afternoon, Jennifer.
Mr. Chair, I think it probably makes sense to discuss item 6C and then the contract item related to the line item transfer together.
Okay, that's fine.
If it pleases you?
Yep.
Okay. Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County. Also Brett Hartzell, El Paso County, project manager for the Colorado Avenue project. Want to address first the Colorado Avenue project, and we are requesting a line item transfer of approximately $3 million, and wanted to give you a good explanation as to why. But I want to talk to the project. I think that this is one of the key projects for the PPRTA extension, and as you know, that this is an unusual project and has been a very complicated project, and so I wanted to make sure that although El Paso County is leading this project, we are team members with City of Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs, And I think the entire team has been working very hard to make sure that we deliver a project that meets the expectations of, our citizens and also our PPRTA CAC and also our PPRTA board. I think that the project is, we are closing it out, and we are very happy. I think it has been a very successful project, and we had a great celebration of our substantial completion late last year. So just brought Brett as the project manager to kind of explain some of those details, because this has been a very long and large, complicated project.
All right, thanks for having me here. Last time I was here and I spoke, I think it was December of 2018, we requested some funds to close out the project, and we got close. We got all the way through substantial completion. Fortunately, like Jennifer said, this is a very complex project, so there was more unforeseen items we didn't see. There was some design that was still being done, some property acquisition that was still remaining. So we wanted to, at that time, forecast all the costs. We did our best. We got close. We got to substantial completion, but there's still some items remaining. So we got two documents we're requesting. One's a line item transfer of around $3 million, which Jennifer stated. And there's a contract amendment for Wildcat of $3.8 million. The difference in those amounts is we've got some additional funding to help cover that gap there. So we only want to request for the item transfer what we need to get that through. And we need to make sure that we increase the contract enough so when we pay using that additional funding, we're still within the contract. So I'll try to categorize some of the additional costs that we're requesting for. I did 11 categories. Some of the items are more on the conservative side on the worst case scenario. One that comes to mind is additional asphalt. This is asphalt that was placed that wasn't to specifications, so there's really a question of whether or not we need to pay that amount or even a portion of that amount. But we're low on right now. The project's low on funds, so we don't really have the additional few months to figure out what amount we'll actually end up paying. So we're requesting some of them are kind of worst case scenarios, with the intent that at the end having some additional funds left over to just give back and have you guys allocate those as necessary. So 11 categories. There's additional asphalt. Extended performance is another one that's worst case scenario. That's something where Wildcats requested a certain amount. We don't think they're entitled to that full amount. We're still working on what amount we would want to come to an agreement on, but again, since we're short in time, request the full amount, settle on a number, then that can just be additional funds when we're complete. Then there's some others, such as property, electric service tie-ins, adjacent property work. A lot kind of goes into that one. That's reinstalling fences, reinstalling business signs. There's driveways where we have to kind of repave. There's some small local utility work on certain properties that we have to still perform. It's all the little stuff. Also, right-of-way markers. We estimated around $65,000 to relocate to reset all the property markers that could possibly have been impacted by the project. That's kind of worst case scenario as well. We think we're less than that, and we think that some of those numbers should be included in the design contract, but request all the funds that we need worst case scenario, and then hopefully not have to use all of that. Then landscape and irrigation. This is a number where there's a lot of landscaping left to do. Wildcat's been out there performing some of that landscaping, and you're starting to see it take shape, but there's still some directional borings that we have to complete. There's irrigation connections. There's actual installation of trees, seeding, blanketing, along the creek. A lot more work remaining. I think that number is probably can be a little bit lower, but don't want to come back here. So try to make it as conservative as possible, but that without having too much waste. So we're not pulling money away that we didn't need. So we spent a lot of time going through all these categories and trying to come up with what we think is a realistic number, but one that we should have a little bit of money left at the end to give back once the project's complete. If you guys have, I can kind of continue with the categories if you guys want. I think you have the same documentation I have. I can also just, if you've got questions about, what CSU/waterline cost, additional costs, I can help explain specifically what some of those items are. Yes.
One of the questions I have has to do with the line item transfer from the Eastonville Road project. If I understand things correctly, the request to increase the project budget is for $3 million of PPRTA funds, is that correct? All right, and on the line item transfer, we're talking about $3.8 million. I'm presuming the roughly $800,000 difference in that goes where, because I'm not certain. Or am I misreading things?
The line item transfer should be for the $3,040,000. There's a $3.8 million for the contract amendment
That's
for
contract
Wildcat.
amount.
So, yeah, unless there's a typo in the paperwork, that it's two separate numbers. The actual contract amendment for Wildcat's higher than what we need to request with the line item transfer. That's because we've got some different funding sources. We got some money coming from the Manitou Springs URA for some of the historic plaza work. We've got some money with the City of Colorado Springs that we haven't used yet. There's some funds available in the Midland Trail project that we haven't used yet. So that's why there's a difference between those two amounts.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm a plain old simple guy. So you have two sources of money. One, you need a line item transfer, and then you're going to add more money from another source and mod the contract for Wildcat.
Yes, because
Okay.
we need to make sure that
Make
that
sure.
the contract we have with Wildcat covers the additional funds to pay them. Because if we have a contract that's just, let's say, $30 million and we're paying above that over the contract, then there's going to be issues with our procurement office.
So I would add, we're moving the money from Eastonville, and I think that's important to talk about. That project is under design. Even though we're moving that money from Eastonville, we anticipate to replenish that next year with, the future budget. And so it's not changing the anticipated timeline or schedule of that Eastonville project, just so that everybody's aware.
Tom?
I have a general question. You work with a variety of vendors out there and everything. Do you keep track of which ones traditionally have cost increases, which ones end up late, all of that, kind of a past performance kind of thing? And do you ever use that in your calculation of they may be the best bid, but it won't be real at the end?
So that's a little bit of a procurement aspect. I do know from a project standpoint, we do with every construction manager contract, with every design contract, every construction contract, we do what we call a performance review, and we rate a variety of different categories, and we keep a record of that I know our procurement office can use. But I'm not sure in what contracts they'll use that and which they don't, and which ones they don't.
Does it ever get applied in the selection process in the future? I realize that you're generally probably advertising as best price versus best value, because best value is a little more nebulous and harder to defend, but
So the answer to that is just simply yes, Tom, we do. So, and just so that everybody's aware, at the end of any of our contracts, we evaluate those contractors. We have forms that we provide to our procurement so that we are able to incorporate that. I would say in regards to this project, I think the contractor has done excellent work. The additional items that we are paying for are appropriate, otherwise we wouldn't be suggesting to pay for them, and I think that they've done a great job. I think that this, again, is a unique project with some unique challenges, and that's why we are where we are at.
I'd like to add that I think I travel that area a fair amount, and the complexity of what was involved in making this beautiful roadway, I think is amazing, and I'm continually amazed by the contractors that can manage so many moving parts at one time and still keep traffic moving. And I think in the end, this is going to be well worth it. I just a heads up, you will get some resistance from the board. You know that ahead of time. So from a couple of members of the board. So just reminder. Reb, do you have a question?
Well, I was going to say the same thing about the board, and it's especially noticeable in the,
Mike?
I was going to say what Tom was saying, but basically, there's some things that are pointed out here that aren't really obvious to certain board members. This project started off, I would guess that you started off with less than 10% design. You had an idea, and that was it. Oh, there's a road here and here that doesn't work well in between, and that's about as general as you could get. So you had a $12 million estimate, you asked for a $12 million increase, and then after that, I'm not sure how I can piece it together, but you are now at about 3.5 times its original estimate. So there will be questions. And boy, I'd be glad to stick up for a bunch of it for you guys, because I have been in the business.
Yeah.
But I don't get to speak to the board, so to speak.
Yeah,
So-
I think the key part there is you started with a minimal design and kind of went along as we'll, and so there's some folks that have changed places on the board since this started, and that fact may be lost on some folks. So I think it was not intended to be a fully designed project when you presented the original cost, and I think that's a key word. So anyway.
And we've also had additional things required since we've begun too, whether it's kind of more strict ADA standards, addition of water quality ponds that initially weren't planned. So there has definitely been some growth to the project cost, but it's all required, and we can support that. I mean, we can provide the backup necessary to show that.
Yep. Rip.
Yeah. The projected forecast, projected funding sources, are we not done with CDOT and devolution? Have we not received the funds?
CDOT, that is complete. Yeah, the CDOT devolution funds, we've used up all that, every dollar.
So you're not assuming that $2 million in any way?
No, this kind of just mainly illustrates the changes since last time you were here and now. So I try to update that to reflect my actual current tracking costs. So that's why you'll see some stuff revised higher, some revised lower, even by 35 cents. That's just because these are my current actual costs.
Okay.
So I got to track everything per contract as well as per funding source. So it gets messy, and then there are slight variations. So the CDOT devolution funds, we used up the last of that early last year. Down to the last penny. So.
Gene?
Quick question. I know we discussed the item 6D with regard to Eastonville Road, but did we separate that from 6D and are going to vote on it same as this, or do we vote this and then the Eastonville Road on the second part on the fund transfer?
I would say that we should, because the line item transfer is needed for the other contract increase, we should probably take two votes.
All right.
One on the line item transfer and then on the contract approval. So, Scott?
I move to approve the line item transfer as presented.
Second.
So we have a second, Reb. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So the line item transfer carries. So item 6D, the contract with Wildcat. Do I hear a motion to approve? Larry?
Second.
And the second was who? Gene? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, you have other contracts you want to discuss as well?
Yep.
So I'll just annotate on the thing that we had a separate vote on those two.
So I'll go ahead and start with our Meridian Road extension and New Meridian Road at US 24 project. We have a TBD in there for contract, the vendor, and the amount. We are still waiting for CDOT, and now it's been another month, CDOT and part of this is federally funded, so I have to have from CDOT a head nod to award the contract. Because I don't want to wait another month. If we get a letter from CDOT here in a week, I'm going to be requesting, and I'm going to go through the project, and so I'm going to request that you approve PPRTA funding in the amount of $3.4 million, and to a vendor that is to be determined. And I'll talk a little bit about the project. Can we, I can probably, can you drive it? Can you go to the
Map.
the map, please? So I'm sorry I can't say who the vendor is, and I'm sorry I cannot say the exact amount, but what I want to tell you is that this project is within the project budget, the bid, and the total project is approximately about $8 million. We are using from PPRTA funds about 3.4, which is what we're asking, about $2.1 million from El Paso County, and about $3.1 million for federal funds. And so what this is this is an entire project with several different sources of funding, and two sources, one from PPRTA 1, which is the Meridian Road Extension, and then the PPRTA 2 project, which ties it all together, which is essentially the intersection project. And then we do have federal dollars for the park and ride itself. So that's the entire project, and like I said, our project is within the overall project budget as identified in PPRTA, and we are looking to award it. So what I'd like to do is have your approval for the $3.4 million from PPRTA extension for the project with a contractor to be determined. I would be happy, once we are able to say who that is, to be able to come back and talk to you about that. Last month we came to you with the Meridian Roundabout, and that project is getting underway, and we really do want to try to do as much of that work together to reduce the impacts to the public. So that's why we're coming. It's unusual to come to you with a TBD and a TBD, but that's why.
Yeah, Jen, has CDOT given you any reason for the delay on their side?
They have to get a head nod from Federal Highways, and there's paperwork to go through, and so I think part of it is because of the beginning of the year, so no, I don't have a definite answer, but I know that they are letting us know that we should be seeing that within a week.
Okay.
So,
Carlos.
Rick, did you say? Oh, who had a hand up down here? Maybe they were rearranging furniture.
and I do want to mention that this bidder that we are anticipating to award to is the lowest responsible bidder. And we feel very comfortable with the contractor.
Carlos, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a clarification on the language. So when you're saying it's to be determined, you really mean to be announced? In other words, you've already selected a vendor, and it just is not announced. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we've selected it. We have to, before we can announce it and award it, we have to because it has federal dollars involved, there are steps, and so we have to have a notice of award from CDOT to be able to then notify and do that fully. So what we're trying to do here is make sure that we have the funding in place for the contractor, which
I just would have chosen a TBA to be announced rather than TBD, which means that you haven't determined who the vendor is. So it's just a minor thing. I just wanted to understand the terminology. Thank you.
Tom?
Are we ready for a motion?
Well, it's actually, she's got other things on this list, so there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 other projects, so.
Do you want me to go ahead with the next one?
Yeah, is that all right? Rick?
On your 3.4 estimate, can you break that down into sub-estimates for the PPRTA 1 versus PPRTA 2?
It's all of the PPRTA extension, because we've exhausted all of our funds for the Meridian South, and we have other funds that we're using to fund that portion of the project. It's partially funded with county funds and federal funds because it's adjacent to the PPRTA 1 project, if that makes sense.
Our 3.4 is PPRTA 2.
Correct.
Okay. We've already done West Colorado Avenue.
I'm sorry. We have
She has a contract here for the West Colorado, and it's a contract amendment number 3, and this is contract amendment number 4.
So I have 4 items. We talked about West Colorado Avenue. This is the first project, the Meridian Road Extension and New Meridian Road at US 24 projects.
We've already approved 1 and 3.
The line item transfer and contract amendment 3. Okay, thank you.
So the other 2 projects we have for your consideration today, the Mark Shuffle Road South project, and this is a contract amendment for $280,000. We are working very hard to finish out this project. It was substantially complete, and we are doing additional work to meet all of the stormwater permitting requirements. That is this additional work. And then finally, from a maintenance standpoint, we are asking for approval for an $80,000 purchase order for our 2020 aggregate contract, and that's really for graveling. And as we have done in the past, we are asking for a maximum amount of $80,000, and we have contracts with several vendors. And what we do is we're able to use different vendors. We have graveling all around the county, and what we do is we, based upon the location, the purchase price, we essentially use the most cost-effective contractor for each location that we're doing graveling across the county, and that's why we have several contractors on this, and we work with them to find the best value when we're graveling each road.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Okay, so let me see if I can remove some of the confusion. So on page 36, this little column thing here, right? Okay. Lower right corner, page 36, with the 4 things that she just went over. I'll take the hit. We've already approved the West Colorado Avenue contract increase of 3.8. So what we're voting on now are the remaining 3 items on that list on page 36. Okay? We have a move for, and Ed is seconding that. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you for your consideration. I know it was a lot more than we usually had, and
All right.
thank you all.
We got it. Under control. Brian, item number 7A, sorry.
Good afternoon, Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit with your monthly transit report. For the month of December, we finished up almost 5% over December of 2018. We provided just about 240,000 trips during the month. And as you can see, 2019 was a good year. I'm not sure what percentage we were up over 2018, but looking at the chart on the first page of this item here, many of our months of operations in 2019 were much higher than the previous 2 years. So things are looking still pretty good, and we're hoping that 2020 continues to be a strong ridership year. For our ADA-powered transit service, we provided service to a little over 12,000 passengers in the month, so ridership was up 1.3%. For our van pool services, we had 25 van pools operating during the month, and ridership was down just below 10%. Project update. At the January PPACG board meeting, the board approved both the 2045 Regional Transit Plan and the Specialized Transportation Plan. So both of those have been finalized, and the final document is on our website, and the link is still active, so you can go and see that. So that was a a pretty intense 8 or 9 months of work, but 2 really good products came out of that, so we're happy with that. The North Nevada Avenue Transit Connectivity Study is continuing. We're about halfway through. We've had 2 rounds of stakeholder meetings, so there's a technical advisory committee and a citizen advisory committee. Probably the 3rd round will happen sometime in April. And just last Wednesday, we had our first public open house, which was very well attended. And 3 hours long, and probably about 200 people during that time came in, and we actually had to go print more surveys to fill out. So vote often, vote as many times as you can, something like that, whatever that phrase is.
The whole North End showed up.
It's early and often.
Vote early, vote often.
Thank you. Yeah. So the project website is at the bottom. Please stay involved in this. There's been an awful lot of misinformation being spread about this project, primarily from the old North End neighborhood leadership. And there are flyers being distributed that show a lot of false information. And actually, some of those flyers were being passed out by neighborhood leaders as they entered our open house last Wednesday. So if you hear some information that doesn't sound quite correct, please visit the project website and get the facts and get the frequently asked questions, and please take some time to fill the survey out. We're keeping the survey active until February 14th, so that's next Friday. And please do whatever you can to share this accurate information with your constituencies. We'd appreciate that.
Just an FYI, Brian, I actually had a couple of folks out in my area who are nowhere near the old North End come to me all fired up because of the misinformation. Once I explained to them everything and suggested that they look at the information available on the website,
Right.
it's amazing how much their attitude changed.
Yeah.
So
Good.
now they're like, oh, I see, it's a NIMBY thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, any questions about these 2 projects?
Good meeting the other night, Larry.
I have one question, not relative to these 2 projects. This is a standard question I ask you, Brian, about every 2 to 3 months. Where do you stand, or where does the city stand on a new transit center?
We are, there was another upper-level meeting, trying to think. It was very early in January, I believe, where we had all of our Federal Transit Administration representatives present, property owner, upper-level city staff to meet on that, and kind of just going through the process and, going over details like whether it's going to be a public-private partnership or a joint development process. It kind of matters just as we're seeking federal dollars and what process that we follow. So all of those details were being discussed, and I think there were a few little details to work out before we announced the location of the site. So sorry. So it's probably like 3 strikes that I haven't been able to answer this, but I promise you, maybe next month we'll have an answer. But we're really close to saying where that site is, but things are still happening in the background, and we're very confident that this is going to work out this time. So thank you for asking again.
Any other questions for Brian? Great, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
8C, 7B, maintenance of effort. Rick?
Thank you, Jim. As everyone is aware, there's a maintenance of effort provision that was in the original establishing IGA and is still in
the various amendments to the establishing IHA, is the intent of the parties that funding from the PPRTA will not be used to substitute for or reduce Colorado Springs funding to the existing transit system, or to substitute for or reduce any party's funding for maintenance. So this applies to Colorado Springs Transit and to all 5 member governments' maintenance. The reports are attached. I have verified that the base year, the 2004 base year figures match what the board has approved. So the step is for you to look at the 2020 non-RTA funding from each of the member governments to see if you agree that they are in compliance, that they are spending at least the 2004 base year out of their own non-RTA funds.
Everybody had a chance to look at these. Any questions regarding this? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Reb and then Larry. All those in favor of making a recommendation to the board that member governments are meeting their maintenance of effort, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good, thank you. 7C, the change order request from the city. Any questions? That's an informational item. Any questions? Not seeing none. Oh, you got a question?
No, make it larger so we
Oh,
can see.
all right. 8A, administrative actions, report of recent board actions. Any questions on that?
My memo's in the packet. Be glad to take any questions about the last board meeting.
All meetings have minutes. This one was an hour. No. Okay. No questions on that. Legislative report.
There is one bill that we are tracking. We've learned about, and it's I've scanned it and added it to your packet. It's House Bill 20-1151. And it allows, if it were to pass, it would allow transportation planning organizations, TPOs, anywhere in the state, to declare themselves to be an RTA by resolution. And the TPO, where it's in a metropolitan area, is also synonymous with MPO. And in our case, we have an MPO within PPACG. So, again, if this bill were to pass, the MPO portion of PPACG, by a majority vote, could declare itself to be an RTA. And of the PPACG MPO members, 4 out of the 5 of them, not RAMA, are members of the Pikes Peak RTA. So again, if this bill were to pass and the MPO subset of PPACG declared itself by resolution to be an RTA, then you'd have an overlap of membership in the Pikes Peak RTA, 4 of the 5 members of the Pikes Peak RTA, and the PPACG MPO that's now a new RTA, again, if the bill passes and if PPACG decides they want to pass a resolution to be an RTA. So it's confusing, and that's what has caused PPRTA staff and the PPRTA attorney to want to talk to the PPRTA board next week in executive session. So I can't share the details with you. So at this point, it's just an information item in advance of the board next week having an executive session to talk about the issues about the potential overlap and confusion.
Yeah, well, am I correct in assuming that one of the concerns about the overlap is going to be similar to what we had with BRTA, and that there are statutory limitations on taxation and funding?
Yes, with sales tax, the state law, RTA state law, it says 1 cent max regardless of how many
Exactly.
RTAs are stacked on top of each other, but the sales tax is limited to one.
Right.
1 cent, sorry.
So
But
it's like these people up at the legislature cannot figure out any way to make our lives more screwed up.
Well, what we've been told is that the sponsor is using this as leverage to try to get a statewide transportation revenue decision made, maybe possibly another statewide ballot measure. So it's leverage to
Force of discussion.
to try to make the legislature or somebody do a statewide ballot measure. Otherwise, you're going to have I can't think of a better word than balkanization. You're going to have potentially a lot more RTAs via COGS and MPOs.
Yeah.
Correct. Scott?
So this legislation would allow a planning organization to call themselves an RTA, but they would still have to have an election to actually have any taxing authority.
Correct.
Gene, is that your question? Okay. Robert?
I'm quite interested in this bill and will look forward to anything that develops. I know you'll keep us informed. But the main reason I wanted to speak at this point is we're right near the very end. I've got a suggestion. I think all of our jurisdictions are doing a great job in their presentations and the material that are put together before us. It's just an amazingly good job by everybody. However, there is one thing is old, probably pretty, certainly among the oldest people here, yet I'm one of the newest members. It's very difficult for me to know with no indication which ones of these projects, transfers of money, are actually related to, and specifically related to, what was shown in the presentations to the citizens when they voted on it in a Category A or Category B or something like that. So why don't we, on these change orders, new business, et cetera, why don't we always identify which ones are in that list that the voters approved and which ones are not? And if they are in the one approved, which one were they approved? It seems to me that should be an important question that we always look at. But I'm new to the system, but I just find myself always asking, gee, where does this fall in what the voters voted for? Now, it's all right to spend money outside of that. I don't have a problem unless I see a hell of a large amount and I understand it that way. Okay. That's my question.
The line item transfers are always between a capital project. The most current ones are PPRTA 2 and the A list. So they're always between a PPRTA 2 A list listed capital project, and it's usually shown in the memo from this PPRTA 2 A list project to this other PPRTA 2 A list project. If it's ever PPRTA 1, then that's identified as such, but at this point, since we're 5 years into PPRTA 2, it's almost always PPRTA 2, and the city and county memos normally state that. Jennifer, Mike, am I stating that correctly, that you show the to and from as far as the capital project name? If her answer is yes, Richard, does that answer your question?
Yes, and can I also mention, just bring your attention to page 36. One of the things that we try to do is, as we list all of our projects, and I think that all the jurisdictions do this, is that we identify whether it's maintenance and, which capital it's coming from and which whether it's PPRTA 1 or PPRTA 2. I don't really call it 1 and 2 because there was some consternation in regards to that at some point. So I usually call it PPRTA and PPRTA extension, or in the example of our summary memo here, we are showing capital and then showing the years of that RTA. So the capital 2005 to 2014 is the first, and then the capital from 2015 to 2024 is the second. So
I'm looking at that, and I admire that, Jennifer. For me, it doesn't matter really so much as to which one it comes from, as long as if it's on there, that's the key, and this does indeed do that.
I would just like to add, I don't think that this committee historically has been pretty good about catching things that aren't on the A list or something going from B to A unnecessarily, and are doing B before A unless there's a real good reason. That's usually thought. But then Rick and Bev are kind of the backup in terms of any invoices or anything that's submitted that if it's not on an A-list project, it gets questioned right back to the member organization before anything's paid. So I appreciate your concern, but I think collectively over time, we've done a pretty good job of making sure that member organizations aren't doing something that's not on the voter-approved list. That's very, very high on our, as a committee, is being able to be accountable back to the people and that we're doing what they ask us to do. So, Jim?
Rick, do you have any insights yet on what the PPACG legislature committee, their perspective is on this law?
The paperwork I've seen says that they are monitoring. They placed it in the monitor category. Not support, not oppose, monitor.
Reb had a question.
Rick, you mentioned TPOs and also MPOs. Approximately how many of those organizations are around the state, and are they, quote, geographically close to civilization, for lack of a better term, but like Montrose,
six or nine?
I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing MPOs is 5, according to Brian.
Right, yeah, it's either 5 or 6.
So basically, this is a tool to get some additional revenues into the transportation system. They don't care where it comes from.
That it's a two-sided coin. It's a threat that there will be lot more RTAs, and those RTAs going to the voters to ask for money in different metropolitan areas or different regions, or a threat that might happen. So if legislature, if you don't want that to happen, then figure out something statewide. Or the flip side of that coin is if you don't figure out something, then this worst-case scenario of having 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 more RTAs in the state might happen. So legislature, you better do something statewide.
But the RTA is limited to 1 cent.
All RTAs are limited to 1 cent, no matter how many RTAs are stacked on top of each other.
By current statute.
By current statute, there you go.
Now, back up. When you say 1 cent each?
No, 1 cent total. 1 cent total.
Yeah, I thought I understood that.
But there are other revenue sources. There's
property tax.
There's property up to 5 mills of property tax. Again, all have to go to the voters. There's a visitor benefit tax, which I call hotel motel tax.
Yeah.
And then there's up to $10 a year a vehicle registration fee on every vehicle.
Visitor benefit tax.
So you could have overlapping RTAs, but using different revenue sources. One takes the 1 cent sales tax, and another one takes a property tax.
And so let's take El Paso County as it stands right now. Monument is not in it. We had Bertha for a while, which was very specific.
Yeah.
You're saying that, quote, you're a resident Monument.
Yep.
Because you aren't, all of a sudden now you want to get an RTA up there. You could do that, but you'd have to get your revenue source from a special,
Other than El Paso County.
well, other than El Paso, because El Paso County would have to allow you to take that revenue? Is that right?
Well, first of all, you have to be an RTA, you have to have 2 or more under current statute, 2 or more jurisdictions. So if it's Monument, then it would have to be Monument in Palmer Lake, or Monument in Tri-View Metro District, because Tri-View Metro District is in the transportation business. So you have to have, first of all, you have to have 2 or more. Now, Monument and Tri-View, or Monument and Palmer Lake, could do a sales tax because the Pikes Peak RTA doesn't cover Monument and Palmer Lake. So that's a completely separate issue from this.
Okay.
They could do that now.
How about the area, because right now I don't even know where the money's coming from. You're completing the interstate intersection or interchange. And this is a question I was going to ask Mike later, but that's being done with private money. What is it? The
Copper Ridge or...
Yeah, Copper Ridge is the developer.
Yeah.
But literally, to get additional funds in there, they'd have to have approval from, I don't know if that's part of the city now or not.
Yeah, that's city.
Okay.
Yeah, is that a metro district? It's some kind of special district.
Developer funded, yeah.
Yes.
But it's a TIF, it's a tax increment finance. So the bond,
Some of the sales tax that the city would get actually goes to pay.
yeah, the city's deferring future sales tax off the future businesses in that area to go to pay the bonds that generated the cash to do that interchange.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't see this as an upside as it is right now for anybody other than the outsiders that aren't organized.
It would mainly affect or be beneficial to those rural areas in eastern Colorado, in Baca County and like Springfield and those who aren't part of a MPO. They're just out there and they get very little transportation dollars to improve any of their infrastructure. So it would be like, Lamar and La Junta and, they're out of the MPO at this point.
But I think there are also TPOs that are not metropolitan, so that there might be another subset of TPOs that are not MPOs that could also take advantage of this bill and form RTAs by resolution. Then they have to go to the voters with whatever revenue source they want to get via tax, via a ballot measure.
Okay. Yes, sir, Carlos.
Yeah, just one comment. The Colorado Sun wrote a pretty good article on this. I don't know if you guys read that. I read it regularly on this specific question of the RTAs, and specifically mentioned the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority and quoted Wayne Williams on that. It's a very good article. I highly recommend it. Kind of gives you a good context of the politics behind this and kind of the thinking that's going on at the state legislature.
Okay. More to follow. All right. Thanks, Rick. Item number 9, agenda topics for next meeting. Mike?
We skipped C.
Oh, I'm sorry, we skipped C. Can just hang tight. So item 8C was appointment of members to the CAC's Public Outreach Subcommittee. Right now, we have a subcommittee of 1, 2. Who's the other one? Rick. Okay. We've had a couple people. We've had as many as 3 or 4 on there.
We had 5 at one point, but then 3 was kind of the...
Yeah, so I asked Rick to add this to the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to volunteer? They don't meet that often,
Yeah, I can tell, I'll go over it. Basically, right now, back in 2007, when we first started doing the public outreach subcommittee, there was a lot of we were trying to create a unified front for all 5 member governments, well, at the time it was 4, member governments to present to the public. We kind of got through all that, and a lot of the suggestions, all the member governments implemented, et cetera, et cetera. Then our big thing became the website. The website's just been updated again. Staff's kind of on cruise control they know kind of what we've expected in the past. So every once in a while, they'll send an email to us and go, hey, would you guys take a look at this, see what you think? The annual report right now, other than the website, is kind of the only thing we really deal with. That doesn't mean something won't come up in the future, but right now, kind of a light load. Won't really demand too much of your time, I don't expect. But that's kind of what we do, is we just make sure that there's the biggest thing, if another reauthorization comes up, there'll be a little bit of work involved in that. The promises made, promises kept, I think, was the biggest thing we came up with the last time.
Yeah, so the reason I added this was for that, thinking ahead as the board and other people began to start putting the messaging forward for an extension. I would like the CAC to have representation in that discussion, and by having it as a subcommittee, it gives us a little bit of impetus to do that. So, Tony, you're raising your hand. Would you like to be part of that?
I'd volunteer to do so, although our CTAB terms are shorter than clearly yours has been if you've been here 13 years. I would be willing to volunteer, though, for the next couple of years.
Anybody else? Okay. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for helping out. Appreciate it. I'll just make that appointment. Okay. Your turn, Mike.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
You're still there.
Yeah.
No,
you've never left.
Yeah, you're
No, you're not getting out of it that easy.
Let me tell you about church.
I just wanted to bring some up, suggestion that we, city would like to do. Right now, we do a quarterly project update, and then we started doing the quarterly A-list financial projection update. And we would like to just kind of combine those two and insert the A-list update into the quarterly, so we just do one report. Rick mentioned that I should probably come to the CAC board and just see, if there's any reason we couldn't do that.
Don't have any issues with that. Do you guys have any issues with that?
Yeah, if it makes sense.
Anytime we can get with the information we need, I'm very sensitive to staff time, and so that's a very appropriate. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And then real quickly, you mentioned the website. I got on it the other day, and it is really nice. It's got good information, very easy to find projects and statuses, so compliments to the website. To the website people who did that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very impressed, so just want to appreciate that.
I have one suggestion that I would just like to throw out. Rick, weigh in here if you think this is not feasible, but someone mentioned the Voyager interchange update that's going on up on North I-25. I know we don't have money in that now, but I see a connection to Powers Extension, and somewhere along the line we're going to get in the middle of this. Just because people don't know the difference between what's going on and what we do, I think it would be beneficial if we were at least aware of what that project, 6 months or so ago, they came, didn't have a lot of information, and it kind of got turned down for funding or something. But would it be reasonable to ask that whoever's heading or is knowledgeable of that come and just give us a 20,000-foot view of what's going on up there? Mike, could whoever's just...
Or either have them come or...
have whatever's appropriate. Anybody have any problem with that, Jim?
No, not a problem, but just a comment. My other foot in the PPACG CAC, we had a really good briefing, and there is a flyover video drawings. I forgot it, the word. Anyway, thank you. Animation of what that's going to look like when it's finished. And I think they're looking out into May of 22 or 21? 22. Yeah.
That'd
And
be
this was somebody from the company that's doing it, the Copper Ridge piece.
Man, if they wouldn't mind a half hour or so or whatever it would take to present that or give it to us, let somebody that's knowledgeable.
It was very good.
That would
It
be
was very good.
great. Thank you. That would be good.
Real quick.
Okay.
Is everybody aware of the research powers thing that's going on? Okay. I just want to make sure. I didn't remember if it came from Rick or from one of the other folks I deal with. The interchange with CDOT.
Oh, the overpass thing or whatever. they
Yeah,
do.
yeah, the split diamond, what? Yeah, diverging diamond, thanks. Yeah. You need to look at it, though, because it's, the diverging diamond is an interesting design.
Which is, well, isn't that the one like at Union and
Exactly.
of Fillmore?
Fillmore. It was a DDI.
So it's what Fillmore and
Yeah, exactly, which is, I've got
Okay.
my own personal opinion on that.
All right, anybody else have any questions they want to think, any announcements or communications? Thank you all for being here. We're adjourned.
Jim, before you leave. Jim. Brian, real quick. Yeah, go ahead.